Well, yeah. How did you get in contact with Alan? Did you call him? Did you email him? Did you drop by or?
Just through management. Yeah,
Management. And what did you tell him? What did you want to do with this album?
Well, he was hired as the engineer. I mean, I'm the producer, so I already have a very strong creative vision for the record. But what I wanted to do was to be able to forget about the process of actually capturing that. I wanted to be in the studio with the rest of my musicians working on the music, and I wanted him to capture the music in the best possible way. And he's a guy that you don't have to question. You don't have to question, you don't have to supervise what he's doing because you know he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
So his brief was basically to record the music in the best possible way.
And well, I've been writing down every output that you've done. It's been almost a record a year, sometimes twice a year, with many different bands. But what I found interesting is that your solo work under your own name, only recently in 2008, your first solo album.
Yeah.
How come only then? Because you reached 40 then?
There are a number of factors. I mean, the picture is not quite as simple as it seems because a lot of the records I've made under project names are also solo records.
Okay.
The first 3 Porcupine Tree albums were solo records. But I think this is the first time, about 3 or 4 years ago, or more than that now, 5 years ago when I did my first solo record. For the first time I made a record that kind of brought together all of the musical strands that were part of my career over the years. My love of progressive music, of course, my love of psychedelic music, but also my love of noise music, of electronic music, of industrial music, of jazz music, of piano ballads. The first record I made, Insurgentes, almost brought all of that together in this big mess. I mean, I love it, but it was kind of a mess. It was a fusion of many different things that shouldn't go together. And so at that point, I felt like this is the first time I can actually say one album is a good representation of my whole musical kind of style, and I couldn't say that before.
But was it when you actually were recording the album that you actually thought, well, now this is going to be a solo album?
Oh yes, I decided to make a solo album, and I decided at that point that I was going to bring everything together, and that this would be. So, but there were other things, like I had just turned 40, or I was about to when I started it, and there was a sense of it's time to start a new chapter.
And now it's chapter 3?
Third one, yeah.
Third one. Well, it's been 2 years since your previous album. You actually brought into the studio the live band of the previous album, the tour that you did with them.
Yeah.
Is it a solo album then?
Is it what, sorry?
Is it a solo album now you're working with them?
Well, that's a very good question. There are many artists over the years that have been solo artists that relied absolutely on the chemistry of the band. I think of people like Miles Davis, I think of people like Neil Young, I think of people like Frank Zappa. These are all solo artists, but in a way their bands were very important to them too. And Peter Gabriel is another example of sort of someone that's still very active, who has a very strong and a band that he's been with for years. Tony Levin, the bass player, has been with him for 35 years now. And I think that though the personality of those musicians is a part of his brand and his personality. So for me now, I think I've reached a point where I like the idea of being more of a musical director, someone who has like a trusted, reliable group of musicians who can interpret what I want to achieve, and I don't have to explain myself too much because we have this history and we have this connection, and I feel like I'm beginning to find that now. But the one thing I would never do is I would never turn it into a democratic band, because I feel like I want to remain the captain of the ship, and I want to be able to harness the talents that I have to fulfill my vision. So in that respect, I'm staying very selfish, but at the same time, I like the kind of electricity and the personality that having a regular group of individuals working with me gives.
So, but is this then a solo album like the first solo album, or is this a solo album like the Frank Zappa, Neil Young?
It's a solo album it's a solo album that has been written for a specific group of musicians to play, and with their musical personalities in mind. And I think that's what Miles Davis did, and I think that's what Frank Zappa did. You know, they had a band and they wrote for those musicians. And I think for me that's the best possible balance to achieve.